Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 12 Minute Mark. We've been looking at what is the cost of discipleship. And here we are now coming to a conclusion of Jesus' ministry at the end of his travels throughout the region. And he's now getting ready to enter Jerusalem. And so we have this one final miracle that we will see, and then his entrance into Jerusalem. And so we'll start in chapter 10, verse 46, Bartimaeus. Then they came to Jericho, and as Jesus' disciples were there, there was a large crowd. And as they were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, was shouting along the roadside, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." When the people then started to rebuke him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Well, call him." So they went to the blind man and said, "Cheer up. Get on your feet. He's calling you." And so he left his cloak there and ran to Jesus, and Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And he said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," Jesus said. "Your faith has healed you." And immediately he received his sight, and he followed Jesus along the way. Then as they approached Jerusalem, along the areas of Bethpage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said, "Go into the village ahead of you. Just as you enter it, you will find a colt that has never been ridden there. Untie it and bring it to me. If anyone asks you what you're doing, tell them that the Lord needs it and will send it back shortly." So they went and found a colt tied in the roadside, just like he'd said. And some people saw them untying and said, "What are you doing untying that colt?" And they answered as Jesus told them, and the people let them go. So when they brought the colt to Jesus, people threw their cloaks over it. He sat on it, and many people threw their cloaks along the road and also got branches that they had cut from the fields. And whenever they went ahead, they would shout, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who's coming, kingdom of David. Hosanna in the highest." Then Jesus enters Jerusalem. He went around the temple and he looked over all around at everything, but since it was now already late, he went out to Bethany with his 12. Here we have what I believe is to be this beautiful story about Bartimaeus. And it's interesting that they give us this name. We never get the name of anyone here, really, that Jesus just randomly heals. But we know Bartimaeus, and he's called the son of Timaeus, meaning that perhaps Mark's readers knew who that was, that he perhaps became someone famous. It's this beautiful miracle as Jesus is walking out. Again, he hears the cry of someone who is blind, and someone who is an outsider. We've talked about the insider-outsider theme. Someone who would seem no hope, no status, no ability, can only receive grace. Much like the children, Bartimaeus is not a child, but there's a helplessness there. Someone who can only receive grace, cannot contribute anything. Doesn't come thinking they have earned something. There is no pride. And it looks like Jesus isn't going to hear him as he's walking, but then Jesus says, "Call him." And the blind man runs to him and is one who has great faith that Jesus will heal him. And so then Jesus tells him, gives him the command to go. Your faith has healed you. But then what we see is, instead of the man going away and doing, let's say you've been blind all your life and all of a sudden you receive your sight. Well, now you want to go. You want to go see the world. All the people you've you've met but never seen, or the sky and the mountains, whatever. You have great plans now. But it says he followed Jesus along the way. This is a beautiful bookend sort of miracle, similar to the one where Jesus, in the very beginning of the gospel, healed Peter's mother-in-law, who laid there sick with a fever. And as soon as she receives the healing touch of Jesus, she waits upon him. She ministers to him. She does whatever she can do to be with him, take care of him, to show him hospitality. And Bartimaeus is a similar way. As soon as he receives the healing, the immediate response of the healing touch of Jesus is to follow him. And that's what he does. And so we have this beautiful, short miracle of Jesus now being followed along the way. Wherever Jesus is going to go, Bartimaeus will not be far behind. And so, and that's the last miracle then before what we've historically called the triumphal entry, where Jesus now goes into Jerusalem for the final week. Now, it starts out, there's an interesting story, quite a bit of detail about tying and untying a donkey. This is some Old Testament prophecy that he will come riding on the colt of a donkey, and the part of the measure of that, or the idea behind it, is that the great conquering king would ride on a stallion or something, not a humble animal. This is about as humble as you can get. And so the disciples go and they do everything that Jesus says, and now he comes into town riding. And it looks like he gets a great reception, because there's people throwing their coats down, and here we have the palm branches. We celebrated a few weeks ago Palm Sunday, and you saw I held a palm branch up for our service, and that's what this episode here is they're celebrating Passover. And so you wonder, how can Jesus come in with such great fanfare and so quickly everything turn against him? Well, they're celebrating Passover, and what they're saying here, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, blessed is he who comes in, for the kingdom of our father David, the coming of the kingdom, Hosanna in the highest. These are psalms of ascent, probably, out of Psalm 118 and some other psalms that the people would be singing. Okay, there's a parade, as we would call it, a religious parade already going on, because it's Passover. Jerusalem is swelling. The number of people there is tremendous. All the pilgrims, all the Jewish pilgrims, they're coming to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. And the place is packed, and they walk up. Jerusalem is up on a hill, so you walk up to Jerusalem from any direction, and you sing these particular psalms. So it would be a miscalculation to think that, everyone has finally accepted Jesus. They're throwing him this great party. This is his coronation, or his installation as Messiah. It is not. It just happens to be Passover. Now they see him. He's recognizable. They know it. Some are excited. But he's not being welcomed in as the Messiah or as the Son of God. He just happens to sort of be maybe the grand marshal of the parade at the moment as he comes in. And so this worship that's going on isn't primarily directed just at him. But messianic views are very high. Everyone's looking for the Messiah. Everyone's looking to take over Rome. Everyone's looking to get under the oppression and back into the greatness of Israel's history. And some, I'm sure, are thinking that Jesus might be the guy. But here in the next 2 chapters, Jesus is going to make clear that he is not the Messiah that they're looking for. He is the Messiah, just not the one they're looking for. And so then he walks into Jerusalem and the temple, which is the temple is a massive structure. Its beauty is probably unmatched by any architecture of the ancient world. And it's interesting. He walks around, and it says he looks at everything, but since it's late, he just sort of leaves and goes out. He'll go out to Bethany, just at the bottom of the hill there, a settlement, and he'll stay there. He's not impressed by all the hoopla. Jesus is never one for hype. He's never been one to be the grand marshal of the parade type. And so he doesn't even spend the night in Jerusalem. He goes back out to get away from the crowd. And so here we have this last ministry miracle. Again, Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus is the opposite of the rich young ruler, which came to him, and I believe in our last episode, or the one before that, where the rich young ruler who had everything to offer, yet went away sad and wouldn't follow Jesus. And here we see the blind Bartimaeus, who comes having nothing and ends up being a follower. Bartimaeus will do what the rich young ruler would not do, because Bartimaeus had nothing to lose. He knew he was just crying out for mercy. He is the picture of the insider who will come into the kingdom and be with Jesus. And so this, again, we have this great two things of irony back and forth, that Bartimaeus, the outsider who even the crowd is telling him to shut up. The crowd is telling him, it's embarrassing for you to keep yelling, you blind beggar, you've been sitting here forever, and it's embarrassing to them. And then all the hoopla around the triumphal entry, where we think everything's going to be wonderful, and it is not. And so it's an interesting thing to think about, who becomes greatest in the kingdom, the cost of discipleship. And again, everything is the opposite in Jesus' kingdom, whether it's the blind beggar who becomes the position of one who will follow, or whether it's all the hype and the parade of the people who are shouting now, but who will soon turn on him. That's what it's like to live in a different kingdom. Well, we'll see you again real soon for our next 12-minute mark as Jesus now does his ministry in Jerusalem. God bless you.